Hello everybody, welcome to today's video. Today we're gonna do something that was kind of requested by a couple of viewers. Thank you for your emails, by the way. Today we're gonna try to include Django, Celery, or just Celery as a task runner or a task worker, a worker thread. There's different names for that. We're gonna try to include that in our task or tickets app. What do you usually use such a task runner for? There's different ways you can think about a task runner. Some people will probably just think about, oh, I could have just done that with a cron job, or I would have just not used the task runner at all. My request would have been like 30 seconds, and that's fine. But let's think about this. You are designing a software, and you have a task that takes some time. You don't know, it could be done in 500 milliseconds, it could be done in 30 seconds, you just don't know, but you don't want to interrupt your request response cycle. For instance, you have a website, you sign up, and that's the example we're going to use, by the way. You sign up and then you send a welcome mail, or you send like a mail with an activation link. That's something you could just easily write in your Django view, right? Okay, but what if your mail server is down or slow, or yeah, let's just say it's slow? Then the user clicks on register and it's nothing is gonna happen for 10-20 seconds. You probably have seen that before too. I'm not just like making things up. And instead, what we really want to do is like the user clicks on the sign up button, is instantly signed up, and the mail sending is done in the background by a worker thread. The user doesn't care if the email server is slow or not. I mean, the user will be refreshing their inbox like every 20 seconds anyway. You can't work around that, but you can work around that your website is responding slowly. Okay, for this to work, I have prepared a couple of things. First of all the source code we're talking about today is again in this GitHub repository. Here's the link. I will put it in the video description. Right now, this is in the Celery branch, but I will merge it into the master branch after this video. Okay, we are starting from the master branch, and just to verify that you can maybe see how we are, I'm starting from this. This is July 2018. That's the last time I did something with Docker here. That's the commit ID. In case you want to follow, I will link the last video about Docker in the video description down below as well. There's one thing I did in between. A, because of Celery. B, because of old Python version. I've upgraded my whole Docker config, at least the dev config. I still need to do that for the production config, to Python 3.5. In case you are with Python 3.4, this is what you need to do, and it's very simple. You go into the docker dev Python Docker file, and this is what you should have had maybe, and you should write 3.5 -Jessie. This is important that you write -Jessie unless you've been on the newer images. If you've been on the older images like me, the Jessie images, Debian Jessie is the thing it's referring to, then you want to stay with Jessie. I mean, there's not much that will break here, maybe the entry point script, but other than that it should be fine. But you should stay on Jessie. Just to confirm, to see what's going on here, we can go to Docker Python. There we go. We can see that, there we go. The newer images are on Stretch. There's some of them on Alpine, but what's really matters is, if you take a look, there's shared tags, and 3.7 as well as 3.6 as well as 3.5 are referring to the Stretch image. They used to refer to the Jessie image, but they kind of changed that sometime. So now, to fix that, in case you run into issues, just write -Jessie, and the whole line is Python 3.5 -Jessie. After you've done that, you need to build the image again, or the Docker container running DockerCompose build, which should be quite fast. Our build is very small, and we're done. Okay, now to the Celery part of things. The Celery project is very well documented. For instance, if you go to celeryproject.org or you Google a little bit for Celery and Django, you will find this document, First Steps with Django. And they write a couple of things. For instance, they write about a modern Django project layout, yay, where you have your init py and your settings py, and on the folder above you have your manage py file. This is kind of what we have. Just to confirm that you can see, we have our app folder, which is kind of the first project folder here, and in that app folder there is our manage py file. And then we have our tickets folder, which is the project folder here, and this is the init py file they're referring to. This is the one level we need to be. So this is the level that we need to do things, and I'm doing it from this documentation here, just so you can maybe follow the same documentation when you're doing that. All right, so the first thing they want to do is they want to have us create a celery.py file in this tickets folder. So in that folder where our init py is. So in here, we're going to create a celery.py. This is important. This file is our entry point script. This is our manage py, so to say, of Celery. So Django manage py is used to run migrations, create a super user, etc., and the run server. And the Celery py is the one that's going to be called when we host the Celery service. All right, and here we only need to copy paste this thing here from the documentation. Don't worry, it's saying we don't have Celery. This is correct. We go step by step. First thing we need to do is we need to adapt this configuration path here. This is your settings file. If you're unsure which one this is, I mean, it's an environment variable. You can override it, right? But if you're unsure, open up your manage py. Take a look here. It says Django settings module default, and that's the line. That's the line you want to copy, or the tickets.settings.dev. That's the line you want to have in here. Okay. Also this one where it says project, this is kind of a prefix what you want to do. For me, this is the app name, like the tickets app, so I'm just gonna write tickets in here, but I think you can write whatever you want. Just remember what you've written in here. The next thing that we need to do, you have this Celery configuration, and it's saying load the config from the config object in settings, and that's called Celery. We're gonna have to go into our settings file, base py. I've scrolled down to the databases part here already, and we're gonna have to define the Celery Broker URL, and that's gonna be something. We're gonna set it later in the tutorial. It's too early now. Okay, next thing, they want us to edit our init py. That's this init py at the same level of our Celery py, and they want us to write this in here. This is essentially not like I lied when I said this is the Celery entry point. We're kind of providing a Celery app in the init py. So what this thing is going to do is Celery is going to run. It's going to run from this folder. It's going to load the tickets app, and it's going to see, oh, there's a Celery app, and from there it is going to load the Celery app in here that we've defined. See, this is the app we're defining here, and this is we're importing the app as Celery app. Yeah, right. Okay, next thing. It's just an explanation what's going on. You can read it if you want. The next thing that's really important is app.autodiscover task. You know, similar that the way that you have your models py in most of your applications, like the comments app here, you have your models py, and the tickets app has the models py. You can now create a tasks py. The tasks py, it's what they say here, is going to be auto-discovered by running this command. So this command is just going to go over all installed apps and try to include a tasks py and load all the tasks from there. So we're going to create a tasks py file in here. All right. The file is empty by default, and it's telling us how we can create a task here. So we're gonna copy paste the code here. Don't worry about the input statement, we will fix that in a second. And how this works is we can create a shared task, it's called. That would be a shared task that just adds up two numbers. So that's kind of not necessary for what we want to do. So we need to write a method here that is doing something sensible kind of, and we're gonna call it post sign up welcome mail. And as a parameter, it's gonna get a user primary key, and if there's no parameter provided, the user primary key is none. And for now, we're just gonna print in post sign up welcome mail user pk equals so dot format user pk. What we could do here as well is we could say user.objects.filter pk equals user pk. There we go, that's our user. And we could say print our user's name. Well, I'll just do this. Welcome user username dot format. My typing is terrible today. User.username, and we need to include the user model here. I'm just gonna copy paste that from here, I believe. No. Do we have the user model somewhere? Let's see. User equal, yeah. You know, there's this get user model function of Django that's very helpful. Yeah. And we can import it from Django contrib.auth import get user model. Okay. I should do this if user. I think we need to say first here as well, and else print user not found, just in case somebody adds us some weird thing here. Okay. Now the next thing we need to do, we need to call this method somehow. So where would we call that? That's actually, we are in the right app. This method, we will call it in the views py, where we have our registration view, and we register. So that's kind of, this is our app. When we go sign up, it's not running right now. I'm sorry, I'll fix that. I've configured my PyCharm, by the way, to run the application. Okay, it's not running anymore anyway. Okay, it's our registration view where we're gonna register, and this is the post. On the post, we will write a user notification, and to do this, we just need to call post sign up welcome mail. Obviously, we need to import it. We're gonna import it from tickets.authentication.tasks. So that's the import statement here. Just need to import the method, the function we actually wrote, and that's fine. And we're gonna call it with the so-called delay function. And as a parameter, we need to provide the user primary key. So up here where we say user.objects.create, we're gonna capture the user, and we're gonna just send it in here. So there we go. This to do is also not needed anymore. Okay. Now, this should work. I mean, we don't have Celery installed yet. We don't have a message broker, but from the code, we're fine. So if all you need is the code for sending an email and running the thing, that's done. Now let's do the funny part and configure our Docker container and our requirements.txt. First, we do need the requirement Celery. I've just had to look up what the version number is at the moment. We're using Celery version 4.2. And we don't want to go higher than 4.2 at the moment. We don't know if they change any API. We can always adapt or increase that if we really want to. Okay, and now we know after we've changed this, we need to rebuild our container. So we're going to say DockerCompose build. This is just going to take a little while. In the meantime, we need to take a little look at the Celery documentation in here. I mean, we're done with the first steps. We could read the other steps down there, but it's not necessary. But there is this first steps with Celery tutorial that you should go through. And that little tutorial that explains you, like the first step is choosing a broker. Celery requires a solution to send and receive messages. This comes in the form of a separate service called a message broker. The idea behind this is, I mean, Django, your Django app, it could crash, right? Or you could want to upgrade it, but your broker will stay up. Your broker is a very reliable service, like a message queue, that's RabbitMQ, or a caching or a key value store, a Redis, for instance, yeah. For this thing, we're gonna go with RabbitMQ. And before we do that, although the image has just finished building, we should be able to run the server. We could see what's going on right now. Okay, it's running. We can just see if we can sign up and what log messages we would get when we sign up, if there's any error or something. So I'm just gonna sign up with a test user. It's probably already taken, knowing my testing skills. Okay, you see that? It's now just like not responding at all. That's a good sign that something is going on in the background and the server is not being reached. In this case, Celery needs the message queue. It needs to reach the message queue. Other than that, it's like not working at all. Okay, so this will time out in a 500 error and some weird error message. But this is where we want to send a message. And to do that, we need to create the RabbitMQ service here. The RabbitMQ service is quite simple to do. We just need RabbitMQ. So we do a new line here. You can comment it, Rabbit message queue, for instance, and you call it RabbitMQ, and you just say, I want to use the RabbitMQ image. Although here we have again the same problem. We should take a look at RabbitMQ. By the way, if you haven't noticed it, if you have a Docker image that starts with a dash here, then an underscore, I mean, then this is the official Docker image for something. So if you do docker plus RabbitMQ and you get that URL with the underscore in it, that's the official RabbitMQ image, and that's usually safe to use. And from here we have a variety of things we can choose. I'm gonna choose the 3.7 Alpine version because Alpine has a very low footprint. So this is gonna be 3.7, there we go, double colon 3.7 Alpine. And I'm just gonna say we're done. This one is still not doing anything. What could we do now? Two things. We need to make sure the Django app, the Python app we have in here, it depends on RabbitMQ to be up. And then we're just gonna do DockerCompose up. It's gonna pull down the RabbitMQ image. I've already pulled it down, so for me it's just starting the images up. And if you look at the top, it should say, oh, way ahead of you there. There we go. No, that's Python. Python, Postgres. That's probably fast if I scroll this way. It's starting the RabbitMQ server and it says done. Oh yeah, there we go. It took a while. It should say some messages. It's starting some other modules for RabbitMQ and it is running. There we go. If we now resubmit our form, a user already exists. So it's gonna be test user 2, test user 2, test and test. Sign up. And the Django app is still not able to send something. I guess this is because of our Celery Broker URL. This is also something we need to set. I believe this is in the documentation in here. There we go. It's telling us you can configure a broker in here, and it says for RabbitMQ you can use AMQP // localhost. So we're gonna set this as our Celery Broker URL. The Django app should reload just in case. I'm just gonna start it again just in case it hasn't reloaded yet. Okay. And we're gonna resend the form. Well, we're registered now. So test user 3 and register. Not quite sure what is going on and why it is not doing what it should be doing, but I think it has something to do with the broker. Yeah, I'm dumb. I'm sorry. That's a common mistake. I did that on purpose, so you can learn from that mistake. If you're running your Django app or your Python app on a dedicated server, you're probably going to have your message queue on localhost. We don't. Our message queue is running on another Docker service that's called RabbitMQ. We need, same as we did with here with Postgres as the host name. The host name for RabbitMQ is RabbitMQ. And the system has reloaded, and we're gonna do it again. And the user exists now, and I'm gonna say it works now. Yeah. Now what doesn't work yet is nobody is handling the tasks we created. So we've got this post sign up welcome mail, and that messages, they should be somewhere. And we can take a look at our DockerCompose. There's no message in here. So nothing is going on. Okay, what we can do to see if Celery is working, we can say DockerCompose run --rm python bash. So we're creating a bash in our Python service, and here we can call Celery -a. Tickets is our app name from our Celery py file. That's this one, and we're gonna start a worker, and we're gonna start it with log level equals info. Crossing fingers, and it's working, and it failed. Okay, it immediately said, oh, we have a user primary key of 8. We received the task. So the message queue was running all along. The message queue did get the message, and it stored it for us until some worker, in this case Celery, said, oh, I want to handle it. We now get an error message in here saying, oh, something went wrong. And it says the username is not a proper thing here. And I guess it's meant this one in the print statement. That's stupid of me, because obviously I would have had to say username equals in here. I don't think this is gonna reload, so we're gonna have to cancel it and start the worker again. And we're gonna sign up again as test user 5. And now you see the sign up was completed immediately, and it immediately got into this thing. And there we go. Welcome user test user 5. So the message queue is working and this code is working. Now, obviously, always going into that container and starting the Celery worker, that's kind of not the way to go. The way to go is to create a a Docker service here. So this is gonna be a Celery worker service, and we're gonna call it Celery worker. And what we need is, we actually need this one. We need exactly the same image as we do here, and there is a syntax for that in Docker. We need to write an and Python. This kind of gives it a label. It now says it's not used anywhere. It's called anchor, and we can say load the anchor. I think that's the correct syntax. I need to double check in my cheat sheet here. Yeah, that's the correct syntax. And this means start another instance of that. And it is very literally like that, because it will do the same damn thing, including opening a port and running the manage py server. That's something we don't need. What we need is, we need a command to run, and the command is the same that we just wrote in the console here, and that was Celery capital A tickets worker log level equals info, and we need to disable the ports. It's done like this, because else it will give you an error message that the port is already taken, not in a nice way, in a Docker way, with a weird error message that nobody understands. And we're gonna have to say this thing depends on RabbitMQ and Postgres. Now you're gonna say, why do we define depends on? I just told you that it's copying things from up here. Oh well, it's very simple. We want this Celery worker to be running, so we're gonna have to say up here, we depend on the Celery worker. And if we wouldn't write the depends on down here, then the Celery worker would depend on the Celery worker, which is kind of not good. Okay, now all we need to do is we need to stop our little Docker here, and we're gonna start it again. And it should now also build and create the Celery worker. You see it here, Celery worker is running. It's not able to connect to RabbitMQ yet. It's trying to reconnect at some point, but RabbitMQ startup takes a little bit, and then it kind of says, oh yeah, we're connected. It's now still complaining that settings.debug is set to true, and that's a memory leak. Yes, obviously don't use settings.debug in production, etc, etc. And we're gonna see what happens when we sign up with our next best test user 6. And we got a message from the Celery worker saying it received a task, post sign up welcome mail with user primary key 10, and it says welcome user, test user 6. So far so good. The worker is running. Now we can close everything other than this. So what is the actual point of the whole thing we're trying to prove? We're not trying to prove that this is working, okay? That has been working a long time ago. We're also not trying to do error handling. As you see, let's like just do some messaging. What we're trying to do is we're trying to send an email. And for this to work, we're just gonna see how this Django sending email works. Yes, I'm also looking it up. We'll change this to version 1.11. And it says we can send an email like this. Okay, that will work for now. From Django core mail, import send mail, and that's send mail. And we're gonna say welcome to tickets. We are very honored to welcome you at our tickets app, whatever you want to write here. And we're writing this from example.com, and we're writing it to user dot, I think it's email. Okay. I'm not quite sure. I think we need to restart our Rabbit or Celery worker. Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna take a look if this is possible. Celery worker reload code. We can pass -- auto reload option when starting. We should try that. There. Because that would make things a lot easier. Is the Celery worker crashed? Unrecognized option -- auto reload. I should have read the thing that it says here. Oh, it doesn't work as expected and it's deprecated. And they want us to install Watchdog. Okay. We're not gonna do that because that is out of the scope of this tutorial. So I'm sorry, guys. Write in the comments if you wanna see that, or if you just wanna follow that, or any other Google link you will find. For now, we're gonna take a look if this is working. The answer most likely is no, because we don't have a way to send emails from this computer or to receive emails either. We would need something like Maildump or Mailhog, but this code, at least, it should work, and it shouldn't do anything bad. And this is our test user 7. I really hope test.com doesn't have a catch-all or something. So we did do the sign up, and Celery worker, did it work? Kind of didn't get a message from Celery worker, did we? I'm not sure if the worker was up. Test user 8. Test and test. There we go, now it worked. We did get an error, although. What's going on? Operating system error, cannot assign requested address. Okay, I'm guessing that I am not allowed to send an email from my server, so my operating system will tell me that I cannot send an email from example.com and stuff like that. That's what I guess that's going on. Okay, it's fine by me. This is although something that would work for you, usually. Okay, so we've seen now how you can create a Celery worker or a shared task, and you can call the shared task. And this could be anything. This could be something like a welcome mail, like we did here, a password reset mail, a complex task for image recognition, or a task that reprocesses your images into thumbnails, stuff like that. Everything is possible. Everything you can write Python code for, you can do that. And all you really need to do is you need to have a worker like this. You can also do stuff like cron jobs. That's what Celery Beat is for. You can write me in the comments if you want to see a video about that. You can also configure the very same thing for your production.yaml Docker file. Essentially, you can copy paste RabbitMQ and Celery Worker. I would recommend taking a look at RabbitMQ configuration, although maybe there's some things that you need to consider for the live images of RabbitMQ for security, but realistically it's Dockerized, so shouldn't be much to consider. And I believe that's it. If you have any questions, please feel free to write in the comments. And yeah, try it out. Take a look at my Git repository if you would like to see some of the source code, or if you couldn't follow it in the video. And yeah, see you next time.